Right, lads, we're back again, and it's just past Christmas time here, and we've got a new topic today. I think this is the most interesting one that I've covered. I think that this is a topic that guys are going to get the most out of, the ones that listen. I think that it'll be a good filter for the guys who really don't want to change and just really only interested in the sizzle. They're not really interested in progression. They're just interested in the Jerry Springer, the drama. And if you're one of the guys that's interested in progression, I think this is going to be the video where you get the most value out of. This is up there with the foundational fitness. I think if you have a foundation of fitness, you can start to assess yourself, but this is still up there in level of importance. It's a very base starting stone. This is part of your slab. You're building your house, and this is just the foundational slab. This is the cement slab underneath it. This goes on par with the foundational fitness, which is very important. And yeah, like I said, Christmas is over here. It's the 27th of December. And yeah, I'm still in Warsaw. So it's much the same. The view's good. In Warsaw, that's the Palace of Culture. So I'm in my apartment here. And yeah, things are good. Life's good. Holidays are good. Christmas went well. Going to be heading down to the orphanage here in a few days to drop presents off. Yeah, look after the people that are doing it hard this year. Like I said in the Christmas message, a lot of people are fucked up this year. There's a lot of people fucked up from things that aren't even their own doing. Kids that are born into shitty families or kids that are born into families where they're fucked up, because a lot of the orphanages here are flooded because people have come in from Ukraine, people who are essentially disadvantaged because of the war. And I find that a lot of people in general, they don't really assess the Ukrainian people are suffering too, but there'd still be Russian people. I mean, if you're a Russian, your dad goes to war. A lot of the time they don't even tell the guy that he's going off to war. They just tell him it's a training mission. And then he thinks, I'll be back in a few weeks or I'll be back in a month, and he's gone. And if he dies over there, it's not like with the US or Oz. It's not guaranteed that they'll even know. It's not guaranteed that they'll even notify the family. It's just dies in the snow there and no one's fucking any the wiser. So there'll be a lot of kids on that side too that are fucked up. Kids that don't really know if they'll see their dad again, and wives and partners that don't really fucking understand what's going on. I imagine the communications over there are pretty fucking terrible. So yeah, it's all part of what I'm linking in together now. And that is, this topic is going to be about self-awareness. And I wouldn't put this under things your father should have taught you, but this is definitely a thing that you need to know as a man. You can't be unaware as a man. A lot of you guys are. Women herself don't really have any self-awareness too, a lot of them. But they can get by because guys still want to fuck them. A 6 out of 10 that has no self-awareness, she can still get the treatment of an 8 out of 10 by guys who just want to fuck her. She's still got a flooded DMs. She's still got a lot of guys that are interested and gassing her up. But if you're an unaware guy, like you're an unaware 6 out of 10, you don't know where you stand, life's going to punish you as a man. It's a lot of guys too are so indirect now that they won't tell you. They won't tell you where you stand. They won't tell you all the things that you're doing wrong, because you're essentially competition as well. You're competition for other men, so it's not really in their advantage to tell you shit, to help you. But with me, I'm not trying to get shit out of you, so I can tell you the truth. I know that there'll be guys on here that don't like me, guys on here that talk shit, guys on here in the comments that just troll and spread a bunch of garbage. But that sort of stuff doesn't really get to me, because what I see and what a lot of guys who are like high net worth or valuable guys think is that every man has a resume. Every man who is worth something has a history and a resume that people can pull and look to. Mine is that I was in prison, I was in the army, I was in a veterans hospital, I was a professional Counter-Strike player, worked in security, I was a fat kid. Mine goes all the way back till I was like a teenager. It's all shit that can be fucking searched and it's documented. People might not agree with it and might not fucking they debate the semantics and, little particularities of it all, but I have a resume. I have a history that people can pull and check, and it runs all the way up to now. I'm a multi-millionaire. I consult for businesses. I run a crypto fund. I still consult crypto projects based on their token metrics and valuations and sort of narratives that they can use and narratives that they can use around the right time to launch, because I understand people. I understand what people buy, and I understand like pretty much valuations to a very large scale. I understand it to a massive degree. I understand how to value companies and things that are difficult to value, and how to move into certain hype narratives and how to move away from other things. Market cycle timing, I'm an expert in that sort of field. So yeah, that is my resume, and people can pull my resume. I mean, you can search my name online and see what I've done, and for the good and the bad, but nonetheless, I still have a resume, and that's what people expect. That's what people expect, specifically as you start to hang around with higher, like net worth or higher income guys. A lot of guys will jump on and just talk shit from being an anon or some fucking loser themselves. It doesn't, like, that sort of stuff doesn't really matter. Like, it doesn't matter what you say. A lot of guys will try to have the right catchy little one-liner, like a zinger, but then as soon as they shut the laptop, they're a fucking loser. That doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't really matter what you say. It's not the guy who says the right little corny line that's going to get the girl. It's not the guy who says the right little corny line that's going to get the job. It's not the guy who says the right little corny line that's going to walk down and pop the door on his fucking Lamborghini. It's the guy who is that guy. It's the guy who has the resume, but he also has the results. It's a lot of the shit guys will do now is it's like I'm benching, I go downstairs and I'm benching like 110, 120 kilos. And I'm repping that weight, I'm benching at flat bench on the bar. And then some fucking nerd comes up to me and goes, that can only bench like 20 kilos himself, some little dweeb. And then he goes, oh man, like you got to lock your elbows in tighter, you got to do this, this, and this. And then he walks off, and then he jumps on his bench and he's got 20 kilos in the bar, and he's struggling under that. A lot of it, that is, we understand that would be like very unaware or very like autistic or something like that. But then a lot of guys, usually from the guise of online or like a safety of their house, they do much the same shit, and just because you're like talking shit about someone else or something like that, guys only assess the results of the person that's talking. We're not women. Women can get away with talking a bunch of garbage because guys ultimately want to fuck them, so they can be like unaware and they can be skewed on their own value because at the end of the day, their pussy, like, it is valuable. There are a lot of guys who will pretty much like gas them up or bend heaven and earth just to try and fuck them, but an unaware guy, like, it's not the same. It's not like you're going to have a fucking shitload of women in your DMs trying to gas you up and just jump on your dick. Stuff doesn't really work, unless you're that guy. And the funny thing is, the more you climb the mountain yourself, you don't really, like, you understand what it takes to become successful, and you understand what it takes to suffer great failures and embarrassment and to be publicly humiliated. You go for something and fucking lose, or like lose in front of an audience. So you're a lot less critical of others. You're a lot less critical of others who like lose. Like, I don't have anything against people who lose by trying, but a lot of guys, like I've said before, they're playing basketball and the buzzer's about to run out, but they just hold the ball instead of shooting because they're too scared to shoot. They're too scared to lose. And then they just lose based on time and lose. They've wasted all that time. The buzzer's now run out. They're like 60 years old, still holding the ball, being like, oh, when do I shoot? But they didn't, like, no loss or triumph. They've essentially settled for the draw, like I said, out the gate. And that's pretty fucked up. That's like a fear, a scarcity thought. A lot of guys have essentially chosen the draw by just becoming like massive wage cucks with no real plan to even have their own gig or like become into management or any sort of leadership role. They've essentially just taken the safest route possible and like locked it in, and that's their future. A lot of guys think like that with women. They won't like show their cards or tell her that they care about her or like give a shit about her or like compliment her and things like that. And then they wonder why things don't really progress. And then they think that they're going to be doing that into their 40s when their value is essentially rock bottom and that people are going to have time for them. And that's not true. No one will have time for the jaded, damaged old fuckboy. There's really only two types of guys. And if you're not in this type of guy, you're in the minority and the world is your oyster. It's either the nice guys who constantly compliment and, give people praise and things like that to try and be nice as a strategy to try and get pussy. And then there's the other extreme, which is guys that kind of neg girls and just expect that girls are going to crawl through broken glass essentially to get to them. And that's not like real. It doesn't really happen. or they'll get like a girl that they like and they're too scared to tell her that they care, and then when it falls apart, they're like fucked up. They're turned off from their feelings, they're turned off from who they are. They don't want to like risk it. They don't want to like take the shot, because that's when you can get trampled on. And when you tell someone that you care about them, they can really start to hurt you then. So a lot of guys live a life like a bot, like a robot. I find a lot of guys think like that they're like out of the way of thinking of like the non-sheep thinking, but their way of thinking is just another form of a sheep. Their way of thinking is just completely leaning into their logic and away from like their feelings completely, because they're hurt, they're damaged, but they don't understand that that's where all the fucking like enjoyment is. We're not made to be robots. Like that's just not the way that life's meant to be lived. We're not computers yet. Being the autistic robot, that's a pretty fucking shallow existence. So yeah, the topic today is going to be self-awareness and why it matters. Self-awareness is just everything. The guy who can become self-aware, it's like a bot, right? Like most bots are. A bot is not self-aware. It doesn't know that it's a bot. It doesn't know that it's a robot. It's a lot of people walk around, they're barely sentient. They're not really fucking even aware of themselves. They're not really aware of themselves, and as such, they don't really have a full picture of the people that are around them either. And how this mattered to me, because I was young. So when I was young, up to probably like 19, I was a fat kid. I was a fat kid that played professional Counter-Strike, and I was good. I was a good player, but the tournaments, like if you were the best team in Australia, you would get like 20k. Like for one, and then you would get like entry into World Cyber Games or CPL or something like that in flights. But between like 5 people and a coach, between fucking like travel, all this sort of stuff, it's not much money. Now they get like $1 million or more for individual tournaments, so it's completely different. But back then, I played in beta 3 all the way up to 1.5. The pay was fucking terrible. So there was just no money in it. I played like, professional, but yeah, the money was shit. So I got out of it. But a lot of the stuff that I learned around that time when I finally quit Counter-Strike, I become self-aware. Like I was a bot then. I was still a bot. I was very distracted. I was playing video games. I was getting picked on in school, but then like coping by drowning myself out into like an artificial world of games and fucking like not really facing myself because I was fat. But when I used to play Counter-Strike all day, I felt great. I'd fucking be a great player. I'd fucking dominate people. But then as soon as the video game ended, I would be back to being a fucking loser. Fat guy. Didn't have any girls. Didn't even get laid till I was like 20. So I was fucking at the bottom, and I understand why people are the way they are. I've started from rock bottom. My dad was incredibly sick, so a lot of the stuff that I discovered was on my own, and it was discovered a bit later in life, but now I look and I think it was later, to discover that at like 19, 20, I thought it was later, but I see a lot of guys walking around at 40 and they're not even self-aware. They're almost like an autistic robot walking around. It's very fucking like damaging, because these are the people that are eventually going to have sons, and I don't know how the fuck their son's going to be able to like be whole, because large parts of them are going to be missing, because large parts of them are missing in their father. So the task that I'm going to give you to becoming self-aware is, I want you to get a notepad and pen. You don't have to do it now. You do it tonight, like before you go to bed or something like that. And I want you to do an assessment of me. Someone that you don't really know, you're not connected to. It's a lot easier to assess someone that you don't really like. It's not someone who's in your friendship circle. It makes it a lot easier. It's difficult when you start to assess yourself. So you can do an assessment of me. You don't have to post it or any of that bullshit, but you can write down the things that you gel with me, the things that you like, the things that you hate, the things that I've done that you can respect, and the things that I've done that you would never want to emulate. And it sounds fucking dumb. I know that you're probably thinking like, oh, this is pointless, but it's part of like developing critical thinking. It's part of developing to be able to see people and strip them raw. See, I can do that. I can be around best friends of mine that I absolutely fucking love, and I can still strip them raw and be like, I know the parts of them that aren't right, and the parts of them that, it's not something I want to emulate, and the parts of them where I can look and be like, I really respect these parts of them, and other parts where I'm like, this is a flaw that the person has. You need to develop that. because a lot of you have it's almost like the fangirls that run around after Justin Bieber, and they only see like the hype. They're standing in the crowd and it's like a group mania that they're involved in, kind of like a cult. They don't really see the person. They just see all the hype and all the bullshit around them. And a lot of people, as a man, you have to have critical thinking. It has to ramp up. A lot of you don't even have a critical thinking process because you watch like reaction videos on how, while other people are watching things and they're reacting to it, and your critical thinking is turned off because you're watching how someone else reacts to a video, and then you're like, yep, that's how I have to think. It's like they're doing all the thought process for you, and that's very fucking damaging, because a lot of the time, like a lot of these autistic robots or these logical guys, their tree of logic is broken, and they don't really understand that at some point the process is fucked up, and then every point from then on is fucked. See, I know a lot of logical guys. I worked in funding for crypto, so I'm around a lot of startups. I know very intelligent people. A lot of guys online aren't really intelligent. They just think they are because they know a bunch of crappy facts. But I know genuinely intelligent people that, run startups and things like that. Some of these guys with like 140 IQs plus, they run tech startups. They're intelligent, like autistic. But they fall over because the communication is usually bad. It's hard for them to get their point across. It's also hard for them to see if people will like their idea or people will like their business or if people will back it. Often they're very disconnected from their audience. It's hard for them to connect. They might have an amazing product, but it's very hard for them to market it. It's very hard for them to get people behind it a lot of the time, to know what people will like about it or to relate to their fucking investors, because some of them, the product is amazing and they understand it at such a high tech level, but they can't get the layman behind it. You can get seed investors and funds and things like that behind it, but the funds, when you're running a fund, you have to think that what will retail do? The funds can see it and be like, yeah, this is a great product and things like that, but will retail get behind it? You look at a lot of the best companies in the world, and they have the best companies as a funding perspective, the best performers. They have often got a story. You look at Tesla, it's got Musk. You look at fucking Amazon, it's got Bezos. He's got the story of starting in the basement. It's a very interesting story. Tesla's got the story of Musk starting in PayPal, then starting Tesla, and now he's moving into many other stories. People back stories. It's just what they back. They back an individual that they can get behind and trust. Whereas these autistic robots, it's difficult for them to understand, to stand in front of people and get people behind them. And I know some guys will be like, yeah, but Musk's an autist or whatever. And yeah, but he's still he can communicate to the layman though. He's got people that can relate to him. He's relatable still. He's not completely unrelatable. I don't know, Bezos is somewhat unrelatable, but he's not completely unrelatable again. Some of these tech teams, they put someone in front of it and you wouldn't even be able to fucking understand them. So you have to be able to relate to them. But yeah, coming back to self-awareness and coming back to what you need to do, this exercise, you need to get a pen and paper down and write down the parts of me that you like and the parts of me that you don't like. The things that I've done that you like and the things that I've done that you don't like. You can jump on fucking Google and search the things that I've done. I'm sure there's a few that you don't fucking like. So it makes it easier because this is distant to you. It's a lot easier to break someone down that either you don't really like or you're not really that related to. And then you do me the first time. You write down what you like, what you don't like, things that you would emulate in me, things that you would never fucking want to emulate. Flaws, strengths, weaknesses. You need to learn to dissect people. You need to learn to dissect them beyond the hype, beyond the fucking guise of a friendship, beyond someone who's your family member and you don't want to hurt their feelings, but you still need to be able to be critical of what they're fucking, who they are and what they've done. And that's a step to getting self-aware. So it's going to start with me. Then once you've done me, I want you to do your father or your mother, whichever one's closer to you. And then, or if you don't have either of those, I want you to do someone that's extremely close to you, someone that you very much respect. And then I want you to say all the good about them. And then I want you to dissect the bad. And I want you to dissect parts of them that you would emulate, like situations that they've been in that you've seen where you're like, I respect that they handled things like that. And other parts where you're like, I don't respect what they did there. They fucked up there. They made mistakes there. And you need to fucking assess their situation and assess them fairly. Not like some Justin Bieber fangirl. Because I find with people, A lot of the shit that the media does and a lot of the shit like all these fucking like, publicists and things like that do, they prey on people that have no critical thinking. A lot of the rappers' stories and like rap scenes and things like that are preying on people who have zero critical thinking. The story, people just tend to believe what they hear, and it's fucking very scary. Like they believe what the group thinks, but they also believe like pretty much what's like written by a publicist that's been paid. Most of the stories that you read online, like 99% of them are paid for. It's just paid to deliver a specific angle and a specific narrative. But you have to think like why they publish shit the way they do. Nothing's free. Like it's not free to just get shit put in the paper. A lot of you guys think that it's just like happens for free. It doesn't. It's even like when the Daily Mail or something in Australia posts shit on bikies and things like that. That's like they've been paid. Like it's done by the government to deliver a specific message and tell people to be scared of a specific force that they're targeting with new laws that they're actually using against civilians. And when people read crap like, I learnt that in funding. I learnt that you could get anything published. Anything about a team, all the like fucking shit that's designed to deliver FOMO, all the shit that's designed to scare people. Someone's paying those articles to deliver a specific narrative. It's not free. Like these companies don't work for free. The block itself, remember the block, the crypto like messenger service, the crypto fucking like news outlet? They just got done because one of the founders had taken like 20 million or something off Sam from FTX. So nothing's free. Like a lot of you guys don't understand that like every one of these has investors and backers, and if you think that their main investor they would ever talk badly about, no. They are like an attack dog. If you control the media or even just one arm of it, you're very powerful because you can push shit onto one person and pull it away from another and reroute it. That's very valuable, specifically to like politicians, celebrities, government. So yeah, you have to be self-aware because a lot of the time like these outlets and that are lying to you and your self-awareness is fucking zero, so you just believe shit that you're told. Like you still watch reaction videos and that to be told pretty much how to think by some other bot. Like you're being programmed, you can't even react yourself. Like you're watching other people, what they do, and then like you're like, yeah, that's what I have to think. It's like you can't even think for yourself. You can't even look at a person and like assess them yourself. You have to see what the others do and then like assess accordingly. That's fucking dangerous. That's programming though. Critical thinking is like what makes them, man. A lot of you guys think you're logical, but you don't even have critical thinking, so how is that possible? Your logic is just like the logic of a bot that's been programmed, and it's just like your logic tree is just programming after programming, and then you just spurt out garbage. Not like nothing that's even like a free thought. A lot of you wouldn't have even had a free thought in like the last 10 years because you don't really like, you're not self-aware. You're turned off from your own strengths and who you are. So as I said before, you need to do the chart with me. So it's my strengths, weaknesses, things you would emulate, things you don't like about me, flaws that I have, and that's fine. I can fucking handle it. And then you need to get that now closer and do the same with a family member. You need to have a family member or someone that you genuinely love or care about, and you need to dissect them. The good, the bad, the ugly, the flaws, things they've done that's good, things they've done that's wrong, even things that they've done that you would have done different and you would have got a better outcome. And then once you've done it and you're getting closer to yourself now, and you can start to like assess and break people down that are even close to you. So you have to get through that like bot programming. A lot of you will struggle doing someone that's close to you, because it's like, it's hard for you because now it's starting to get like internal. See, when it's very far out, you break someone down who doesn't really mean shit to you. That's fine. Like anyone can do that. But once you start coming closer to yourself, it gets harder. And then you need to eventually assess yourself. You need to assess your strengths, weaknesses, things you would change about yourself, moments that you did well, moments that you fucked up. Why did you fuck up? Like, how could you have done shit differently? And I know I tell people not to look into the past, but in this situation, it's important that you do, because this is shit that you probably should have already done. A lot of you guys will have belief systems that you had pretty much for like the last 10 or 20 years, even though they're completely invalid. You just can't change it because you're so set in your ways. Like you think to change a belief means that you're like betraying it. Some of you guys will have friends that will like you've had since you were a fucking teenager, and the friend now is just a massive loser and a massive fuck up, and you still consider them friends because you think that you have to keep it real and just like be exactly the same guy that you were even since high school. Some of you guys will be wearing pretty much the same clothes that you used to wear since high school because you're trying to like keep it real again, and just you don't want to like be one of those guys that changes, but you don't understand that life is fluid. You have to change. Like, we're always changing, we're always evolving. I'm just, like I've said before, the product of copying like 50 people over my lifetime, and just finding the things that I gel with and then emulating it and like building upon it into myself. We're all like that, but it takes a level of self-awareness to admit that. You know, it's a lot of you are copying people, but they're fucking losers that you're copying instead of copying winners. I only copy the greats. Like, I always have. Like, even when I was like early 20s or something, I start watching and reading and learning about just great men. It wasn't always men that did great moral things. It was just men that left a mark on the world, and men who like became powerful or rich or like influential. It's the route is there. You know, it's once you get to the higher levels too, you'll learn that a lot of men like at that level have a lot in common. You know, a lot of the shit that they do and the beliefs that they have, they start to like all match up. A lot of guys will say shit like, oh, I'm copying X, or I'm copying Y, or I must be copying this guy, just because 2 + 2 = 4. Like, just because two people come up with the same fucking like answer, it doesn't mean that one copied the other. Sometimes that is just the answer. A lot of people can't fucking understand that because they have no critical thinking. They can't think shit through from themselves. They wait to be told what to think. And that's fucking scary. Like, that's a lot of how all those lockdowns and shit happen. You know, that's just a massive group think. That's not the critical thinker thinking like, you know, there's going to be problems with the economy if like we print heaps of money and inflation's just going to shit all these like third world countries into oblivion, which is what's happened. You know, a lot of the countries like America and things like that, they're complaining about gas prices, and that's a real thing. But in like the third world, they're completely crippled. Like, some of them have had like, the inflation is just astronomical. Like in some of these places, like Turkey, Ukraine, some of those like inflation is hectic. You know, obviously Venezuela, but it's always like been that way for a very long time. That's a currency collapse. But yeah, you need to now assess yourself. You need to now like take your notepad out, write all the things you're like good at, all the things that you're proud of yourself that you do, and all the things that you fuck up. Like, maybe you might have a food addiction. You might be watching too much porn. You might be sitting on Netflix till fucking like 4 a.m. every day. You might be just wasting too much time. Maybe video games. Maybe you're bad with girls. Maybe you can't hold down a relationship. Like, maybe you have like fuck all money. You're a broke boy. You know, it's very hard the closer you get to yourself to be like critical of yourself. And I know a lot of guys will tell you to be like, just be really positive and like, you know, have that toxic positivity where you tell everyone that you're the man, even when you have fucking $2 in the bank. But that's bullshit. That's pretend. You know, just running around with some fucking big ego that you haven't even earned, that's crap. You know, as soon as you're around people that matter, they're just going to be like, well, this guy's fucking like unaware. This guy's delusional. He's unaware of his value completely. And it takes practice. You know, it takes practice. And I know that it doesn't sound very attractive to do it, but it will change your life. You know, it's one of those things that it's just it's part of the foundation. You know, it's a slab of the foundation to be self-aware, because when you're self-aware and like you take the mask off and look at yourself in the eye, then you can change. You can't change as some anon sitting online or some like troll running around just talking garbage. You know, you have to show the world who you are. You have to take up space and be like, I'm here. Maybe I'm not perfect, but I'm fucking like this guy. I'm here. And now I'm going to fucking like, you know, I'm going to work. I'm going to become the guy that I want to be. I'm going to be noticed. Some of you just pretend that you want to be invisible in the world. You know, and that's only because like you're insecure and you're fucking like, you know, the thought of like taking up space in the real world scares you. But then online, it's often the same people that'll just talk garbage and like fucking shit the world up and tell everyone how shit they are because they're fucking hiding behind some anon character or hiding online. That's crap. You know, you can only face the world with your mask off. You know, face the world as you are, and then you can change. You know, and I know some of you will be like 40 years old and you're just completely unaware, like you're not sentient at all. You're just walking around as a bot. But that doesn't mean that, it's still worth taking the mask off and fucking like facing yourself. Because, by 45, you can be completely different. Maybe you're 40 years old with no girls, no fucking like money, nothing. But you can still be better than you were yesterday. Maybe you're at the bottom of the mountain at 40 years old and you're looking up and it's like Mount Everest and you think, well, fuck that. Why would I start? Like this is too high. I may as well just stay down the bottom. This is too much work. But the journey is a journey of many mountains. It's not just like, you start at 0 and you have to go all the way to 100. The trip is the fucking fun. Like the journey is the fun part. The journey essentially is your life. It's the steps that you're making, like that's your life. Like there's nothing that compares to being self-aware. Like when you have kids and things like that too, you'll have things to pass on to them because you'll be able to spot the weaknesses that they have. Like you'll become more aware of the world. The hippies and things like that, they understand the self-awareness to a degree, but often they're so focused on it that they become massive losers. You have to still be like working, you still have to be progressing, you still have to be like making money and things like that. You don't want to turn around and become like one of these spiritual fucking bums that just... Spirituality is something that more comes at the end. Like if I want to go to retreats and things like that now, I could easily. I've got the money, I've got the fucking time, I've got the experiences, I've got the puzzle in my head. I've already had massive amounts of experience in many fucking things. I've had the hardships. So if I want to sit in retreats, it would make sense. But I don't really want to do that. But I don't sit around and reflect too much. But again, I do challenge my belief system. I regularly do. Some of you guys will like be so critical, like if politics is a large part of your life, and you'll be so critical of like the right wing or the left wing, and then just completely oblivious to what your own party does. Your own party can do something extreme or like something that's fucking dumb, and then you'll just be like completely pretend that it didn't happen or completely oblivious to it while still attacking the other side. It's a lot of guys will like hate CNN one week and tell everyone how bullshit their news is, but then something gets published that supports something they believe in the next week, and then they're telling everyone how great the fucking thing is. It's a lot of the shit like that. The truth's generally in the middle. It's like you get two sides and both have completely opposite points of view. Often the truth is in the middle, that is becoming more and more extreme. And that's, with politics, that's by design because it gets more attention, more extreme it gets. See, it's an attention economy, so when they put politicians in that are fucking like oddballs and like retards essentially, it gets more attention and it makes them, essentially gives them more energy and more power, because it doesn't really matter like the people watching all that shit and voting and doing all that crap. They're the ones that keep it alive. They keep the fucking like, they're feeding their energy into the machine. It's like that fucking Simpsons episode where it says like the Halloween one where it's like, just don't look and they'll go away, like they would disappear. That's a lot of that shit would happen, specifically in like the Hollywood sort of fucking scene. So of course they're moving more celebrities and like freaky people through politics and that. That's designed that way, so it gets more attention. It's an attention world. The more shit that happens to it comes down to funding again. It doesn't matter, like as long as it gets your attention, that's all that matters. It doesn't matter if it gets your attention and you just think how fucking crazy it is, because it's an attention world. It's a world of energy exchange. You don't understand that. Don't understand how that works. But what they're consuming energy and you're giving it. So they're producing, you're consuming. That's the danger. That's the way the world works. Like you want to be a minimal consumer. You want to move into production. That's difficult though, because that's work. It's easier to just consume shit and be like a fucking peon. But that's a story for another day. Might do a story on energy exchange and energy fucking like being an energy vampire and all that sort of shit, and how it actually does work. Positive, negative energy, and how you can use it to get everything that you want. It's a real thing. I know I'm worth over $10 million. I'm from the fucking ghetto, essentially. I'm from a very small town, but I've also lived in ghettos. I'm from fucking a town of 200 people originally. I didn't have any advantages. I've been to year 9 in schooling. Everything I learnt was learnt pretty much on the street. And I've done fucking things that, I've had things happen to me that would have killed more men than most men. Certainly would have broken them. I've been to places that people could never come back from. I've been to places where great men have never come back from. So I didn't just come back. I come back a multi-millionaire. I have a great network of friends around me that is very supportive. I like to think that I'm supportive of them. I think I'm part of a good team. And I think I'm an asset to those around me. And I produce this stuff for free because I know it has value. And self-awareness, again, let's go back to it. It's very important. You can't live your life as a bot, because when you have kids, you have to be able to like give to them as well. Self-awareness means like being able to see people in the room that are uncomfortable, being able to see girls that are uncomfortable, being able to see the reaction to your actions that happens in other people. Some of you are fucking like just completely switched off. I don't know if it's just distractions or like part of like autistic, like being an autistic robot from too much computer use. But yeah, it's fucking damaging. It's damaging to the world, because essentially these are the people that shit the world up, because it's not possible for them to see how their like actions make others feel and make others like, repulsed to them. But then these are the same people who will not be very high in life. They'll be stuck like very low. Like if you want to be a leader and things like that, you need self-awareness. To lead, you have to be self-aware. To lead men, you have to be self-aware, because men, you can't just decide to be a leader of men. You can't just wake up one day and say, yep, that's it. I'm going to go start telling men what to do and what they should do and what they should do with their life. That's not how men think. Men follow competence. That's the trick. You probably don't understand that. You think that men just follow the loudest guy in the room who just tells them shit to do. Most men won't. The idea of other competent men following a guy like that's not how it works. Only insecure people will follow that man. The other men will push back and fucking cause a problem. Eventually it'll explode. What they don't tell you either is that women are the same. Women follow competence. Women respect competent men. Women don't just... A lot of guys watch I don't know, like Christian Grey or like fucking all that sort of shit movies, and then they think women just react to just being told what to do by just any fucking idiot. Some guys confuse sexual submission with actual submission. What a chick does when she's wet is not what she'll do when she's like just walking around normal. To get actual submission, or to get people to follow you, or to get people to respect you, or get people to work under you and things like that, that takes you being self-aware. And you have to be self-aware because you have to see how your actions reflect, like move onto them. You have to, when someone's submissive to you, or you've got like a work, like fucking someone working under you, or you've got like staff, you have to think about their life. You have to then be self-aware of like shit that you do affects them. The actions that you make, they affect their life. Some of them have fucking families and shit like that. So they're very reliant on you. A lot of your staff, like they're taking a complete chance on you. If you're like treat them bad, or the job blows up or something like that, some of them have families and they like might not be able to pay the rent this week, and they could be out on the street. So again, when you're like, that shit happens, you have to be, you become self-aware, because your actions move on to a bunch of other people. If you're like the guy who's got no awareness, living with mummy still, and you're like, sleeping in the basement, playing video games, maybe if that's all you ever want to be, like some massive peon, then maybe the self-awareness probably isn't for you, because if you look into yourself, you'll be like, oh, I have too many flaws and too much shit to like change, and it's easy to just remain a bot. But don't run around and talk about having free thoughts, because a lot of those guys don't have any free thoughts. Their critical thinking is zero. If they had any critical thinking, they would be out of the basement. It's a lot of guys will like point fingers and tell people how like shit that's wrong with them and things like that, and then like their life is fucking 10 times worse. It's like I said before, it's not really what you say, it's more about who says it. It's everyone has a resume now. Everyone has a LinkedIn or like a Instagram, or they have a history. I have friends in most big cities in the world. So if I want to find out about a person, I easily can. It's if someone wants to penetrate my like fucking friendship circle or something like that, or jumps into it and wants to fucking like meet everyone, they have to have a resume. They have to have people that know them. They have to have people that recommend them. Like I've said before, it's not about meeting people. It's about who you meet them with. You know, it's not about just like running up to someone on the street and introducing yourself. You need to be introduced by someone that that person respects. That's the ideal approach, because they're essentially giving you a green light. You know, and then your experience is going to be completely different. First, if you just run up to the person on the street and just start talking, that person's going to be like standoffish and be like, who the fuck is this guy? I don't know anyone that knows this guy. Is a complete random. So yeah, again, bringing it all back to self-awareness. I've told you that you need to do a critical thinking of yourself. You need to write down your flaws, strengths, flaws and weaknesses. I think often flaws, it's not like if you've got some massive genetic flaw, like you've got a big fucking like, I don't know, something that you can't change. You've got some sort of like disability or something like that. I would say you would still put that as a flaw, but you can't you can't be hypercritical of shit like that, but you have to be aware of it. You know, I have PTSD from the army, and I don't sit there and fucking, I understand that I have limitations for the shit that I can do. You know, if I don't get my sleep at the right time, like if I stay up till like 3 or 4 every night and don't sleep like 5 or 6 hours, I need to get like my at least 7 hours a night. Otherwise, I just start like turning to shit. I get like pissed off. I'll get paranoid. I get like almost like an anxiety starts to build up if I'm only getting like 5 hours, and I build it up and do that for like week after week. I need my sleep. I think a lot of people, if they have like a mental health thing, they will be the same. You need to sleep. You know, sleep itself is very important. I think when you're younger, maybe like early 20s or like 20, you can get by with less sleep, but that doesn't mean that it's like optimal. I think everyone needs their 7 hours. Maybe you're like an anomaly, you can get by on 6, but I think everyone needs like 6 to 7 hours. And I know that a lot of this shit will be like, you need to hustle every second, but sleep is like, it's a non-negotiable. You know, it's like eating or fucking going to the gym or fucking. You know, these are just things that you need to do to be like healthy. You know, they release a lot of certain chemicals and hormones and things like that makes you like complete. So you need if you're working hard and you're in the gym and things like that, you need the recovery. And if you don't get it, you'll pay the price later. You know, it's not optimal. It's not something you can really skimp on. It's like driving your fucking supercar and then being like, oh no, I'm going to skimp on tires. That's pointless, because then all the fucking like drive, all the power from the engine goes to your tires, and then your tires aren't like fucking optimal. So you're losing performance and it becomes dangerous. All for fuck all, because you don't want to spend like an extra $500 on better tires. So that's dumb. But yeah, so self-awareness, I said bring it back to your flaws. If you've got a disability or like some mental health thing, I would still put that in as a flaw, and also put in how you manage it. And are you actually like actively managing it? Are you doing what you're meant to do, or are you fucking like just taking the piss? And a flaw can be like an injury. You might have a fucked up shoulder, you might have a fucked knee, you might have a fucked back that just hasn't really healed. Like no matter what you do, it's always like 90%, but it can slip back down if you don't manage it properly. That's the sort of shit that you need to stay on top of, because when you hit your 30s or 40s, it will get worse. You know, some of that shit's lifelong. You know, just because you've got a bad knee and it's kind of like a bit bad in your 20s, that can become more serious in your 30s and 40s. So you need to stay on top of that shit. You need to put that down as well, and just how you manage it. But all it's just about being self-aware of yourself, your body, your mind, thoughts that you have. Some of you need to write down the ideas that you have and like what you're critical of and why you're so critical of it. Like, you know, it might be like an idea that you hate a specific person. Like, why do you hate them? When you write down why you hate them, you might realize that it's pretty fucking dumb. Some of you guys will hate someone that like said something to you 20 years ago, like, and you'll still hold on to it. You'll be like, yeah, this guy bullied me once on the bus like 20 years ago. He said that I was a pussy. Something like that. Like, you gotta let all that shit go. Because when you're like fucking still holding on to crap like that, it's still like, it's like your computer is your mind and you've got 100%. But even if that's only taking up like 1 or 2%, that's still pointless. Like, it's just dead shit sitting in there. You need to dump it all out. Some of you will have like belief systems that don't serve you. Some of you will have like some racist shit that doesn't serve you. You'll be like, oh, I wouldn't work for a black boss, or I wouldn't work for a white boss, or like, I don't do this, or like, I believe all like white people are bad or all black people are bad. And that stuff's like crap. You know, it's very obviously fucking not true. You know, it's some of that crap that you guys will think like racist shit. It's on par with like some guys that are just like pretty much that they hate women. You know, it's It's just to like tar everyone with like one brush. That's bullshit. Like that's again a lack of self-awareness. That's a lack of critical thinking. To be like, oh no, all white people are shit, or to be the other extreme and be like, all black people are shit. It's the logical person who actually has critical thinking would say that there's shit parts from both sides. Just because someone's a certain skin color, that doesn't mean that they're going to be good or bad. It's you still have to be like fucking aware. It's like if you walk into a church and there's a priest there, you have to be aware that they're probably going to be like good, but they might not be. Doesn't mean that they're going to be fucking like, a saint. They could still fuck you over or do something fucking dodgy. It's just because it's less likely to happen doesn't mean that it's impossible. You have to have like, it's again part of critical thinking. You have to not be, that's part of not being easy to con, not being easy to scam, not being easy to fuck over by women. Some of you are so easy to fuck over too because you just no critical thinking at all. Like women can just fleece you dry, or like you're just a sucker because you don't have you can't really see a situation for as it is. You often either see it for how you want it to be, or you see it for like a global profile of how it should be, instead of like fucking how it is. Like you can't look at a chick and like strip her down as well and be like, these are the good things about it, these are the things that I need to watch about it. You're either completely in love or like completely hate all women. You can love a person and still accept that they're flawed. You can fucking really respect a person and still know that there's parts of them that you fucking like either can't trust or need to be cautious of. I've shared a cell with a guy who was in for fucking like attempted murder. He was in for attempted murder for stabbing someone, and I still had to sleep near him. And I didn't think that it wasn't guaranteed that he was going to try and kill me. But of course, when we talk during the day, well, it's consider us like okay friends. But that doesn't mean at night that he wouldn't turn around and like stab me or do something. Like I have to be fucking aware that it's in his past or he's accused of it. So it's a piece of information that's fucking important. I need to be like, my mind needs to know that that's a piece that sits in that, and then like that's important information to know. Like if you're with someone who's like, you're with a chick and 10 people tell you that she's a hoe, that doesn't mean that she's a hoe. They might just be haters, or they might be jealous, or they might be upset that, you're fucking her, or they might be like, want to make things worse for you. They might want you single. You could have friends that are like, I just want him single. So we can all go and party and shit. Some people are selfish like that. But you would be crazy not to keep it in the back of your mind. And then you've got like, if you see any hoe tendencies or whatever, you're like aware of it. It flags instantly because you've got that 10 pieces of information as well to like look over. And then you go, actually, yeah, I'm seeing some hoe behavior. It's starting to tie up. It's like you're in the fucking African jungle and you're walking around and you're like, yeah, there's lions here, so I have to be cautious. And then you like scanning a bit more instead of the blissfully unaware guy who just walks along like pretty much with a lollipop in front of him and then fucking gets mauled. You have to be aware that, there are people out there that would want to hurt you, and there are people out there that want to fuck you over, and they could use you as a stepping stone to get what they want. But that's part of the game. It's actually part of like what makes life like exciting and what makes life what it is. Not walking around like a bot. Some of you are like, yeah, just like NPCs. Like you haven't had like a free thought in so many fucking years. Like, you got a boss at work and you've got someone who pretty much manages you, and someone who like, you might have a chick or something and she kind of like runs a relationship as well. Like you're not really in charge there. You've got no responsibility really, and then, yeah, like shoulders are very weak because you've got no responsibility. But then you think like when you have kids that you're going to have shit to teach them, Self-awareness is very important. Because the thing you can pass on, like the lessons that you learn about yourself, and by being self-aware, you become empathetic to others. Some of you guys have no empathy because you're like autistic robots, but you don't love yourself either because a lot of you don't really know yourself. You just live a life completely distracted. You don't realize like other people are flawed and other people have fucking issues and things like that. And the difference between being empathetic doesn't mean running around fucking like trying to solve people's problems and fucking like, being a nice guy and like kissing ass and shit like that. Empathetic can just mean like you see the shit parts of them that are fucked up, you can use that against them. That doesn't mean like, it's very important in like business deals, negotiations, or any sort of like, negotiating terms with a girl. You have to see their flaws, and then you can fucking like, know the routes that you can use. Like, what you have leverage in. Some of you would never even know that. You enter a business discussion or like you want to raise at work or something like that. You don't even understand like what parts of yourself the boss like can't afford to lose. What parts of yourself like is valuable. So you can't strengthen those parts either and make them really strong. See, I can do that. I get the most out of my fucking like, strengths. I have them to the max, and my weaknesses, I have them like kept quite invisible. But only because I know my weaknesses, I know those parts of me that are strong and the parts of me that aren't fucking strong at all. And that only comes from being self-aware. I remember I was sitting in the Veterans Hospital. I sat in a Veterans Hospital for like 14 months. A lot of the guys there weren't really like self-aware. They're taking like medication and diagnosed with shit, problems and things like that. So it's a very negative environment. Once you start taking medication and things like that, I think that it discourages you from being self-aware, because your fucking like mind is kind of like scrambled. A lot of that medication kind of like slows people down, so they can't really think that well. They can't like have like introspection on themselves. It's hard to look in then. A lot of the people in those places, and I have a lot of respect for them, they're like very stuck though on like what's happening on the outside, what other people are doing. And a lot of men now in today's society, they're very stuck the same. They're not like accepting accountability or accepting responsibility for their position. They're very focused on like, what the outside is doing, what maybe their boss is giving them a hard time or some crap like that. They're not focused on like how they're reacting to it and how they're going to change it and what they're going to do in the future and how they're going to get out of that position, and how they're going to like move around and like not be stuck in this bad position all the time. How they're going to get stronger, but also how they're going to become more valuable so that they don't have to take as much shit. The more valuable you get, the less shit you have to take in general. I don't really have to take any shit like all day, most days. Like I don't, if anything happens, it's small. I have shit that happens, it's big too, but it's not like people fucking me around. It's not like people, I don't have a boss. I don't have anyone that I like report to or any of that crap. So I don't really have a lot of that shit. If it happens, it's more like external. Maybe I have a technician here or something and he fucks around. But yeah, or like a car and have some issues with it or something. But it's quite minor. And I have the money to get around all of that, So again, money does bypass a lot of that, but you still have to be self-aware if you've got money. Otherwise, you'll just be a target. Money for some, it just makes them a bigger target. It makes them more attractive to fuck over. Some guys with money, if they can bypass being self-aware, it's dangerous. Like maybe they have a massive crypto win or something, or like catch a huge pump or make a heap of money in crypto, and they think that don't need to become self-aware. And those are the ones that can run into the biggest issues of all. And get fucking like smashed in a divorce, or like have chicks to have a baby to some like hood chick or some trash bag that pretty much rakes them through the coals and then destroys them. Some of them aren't self-aware enough to realize like that they were lucky. They caught like a massive pump, or they made like a 500x gain or something like that, and now they just like jump on the margin exchange or something and keep leverage trading or shit like that and blow their whole account up. I've known fucking at least probably 10 guys that have done that this market cycle. Guys that had made millions of dollars and then blew their accounts up, like margin trading, because they think that like the bottom's in, so they long, or they think like it's time to short, and now they're getting destroyed in this chop because it's a choppy market. You had Luna blow up, you had 3 Arrows blow up, FTX blow up, BlockFi blow up. What's the other ones? Celsius and fucking Genesis. Like, you've had a lot of these platforms blow up. So it's been like a massive amount of black swans in one cycle. And now we've got Mount Gox, so there's a lot of like black swans looming. So you have to be, self-awareness is a big one. Self-awareness, it doesn't matter if you're poor or rich. You have to be aware of yourself. And it's an attractive quality. Like, it's attractive quality to know your strengths and also your weaknesses, because you can push your strengths out into the world and hide your weaknesses if that's what you really want. And when you meet women, it makes you interesting to talk to. You know, you're not talking to her like some fucking robot. You know, she doesn't look at you and be like, this guy's like just talking a bunch of garbage. Like, this isn't even who he is. It's not congruent because he's not self-aware. So yeah, I hope that you fucking take this on board and do the exercise that I gave you. You know, writing down your strengths and weaknesses. You can start with me if you think that, you know, to assess yourself it's too difficult. Like I said, it might be addictions, it might be habits that you have that are negative, it might be that you're fat, it might be that you're too thin, you know, you're too much of a fucking weakling, like you're a lightweight. You don't really look like a man. Like some of you look like little boys running around even though you're 30. Doesn't mean being built like Hercules, but you have to at least like have something about you where people look at you and they're like, oh yeah, he looks like a man. Can't like, you know, you don't have to be imposing and scare people, but you still have to have like a presence to you. You know, that you can be like, I'm here, instead of showing up and being like, oh, I hope no one notices me, I just want to be invisible. You know, that's crap. Because when you have kids and things like that, like you're just going to pass that shit onto them. And we're not living in a world where it's a good thing to be invisible. You know, everything's online, like everything can be seen. So the guy who wants to stay invisible, like he's really fucking hurting his bloodline. He's not really encouraging himself to change either. By staying invisible, he doesn't really face the like insecurities that he has. So yeah, that's probably a pretty short one today. But yeah, that's my take on self-awareness, lads. Until next time.